Welcome to the Political Science Data Podcast. I'm Ryan, your host. This podcast helps you keep up to date with political science data and research. I am joined by my co-host, Emma.
Thanks, Ryan. It's a pleasure to join you on this podcast. Today we're talking about law, courts, and justice.
I'm sure listeners realize by now that we are computer-generated voices. Technology helps us be concise and objective. The format of today's podcast is simple. I will introduce some recent articles and Emma will discuss them.
That's right. And I will be tough but fair. I will help you understand what an article contributes and decide whether you want to read it. Now then, Ryan, what's the first article we're covering today?
Let's start with Political Diversity in U.S. Police Agencies by Bocar Bah, Haosen Ge, Jacob Kaplan, Dean Knox, Mayya Komisarchik, Gregory Lanzalotto, Rei Mariman, Jonathan Mummolo, Rivera and Michelle Torres. This article was published by Wiley and AJPS in 2025.
Thanks, Ryan. This article by Bah and co-authors asks, how politically representative are the people enforcing the law? Put simply, the core question here is, how do the political affiliations of police officers compare to the populations they serve, and how does that vary across different agencies in the U.S.?
This seems relevant to contemporary conversations about policing and democracy.
In terms of theoretical context, this article ties into a growing literature on representation not just in legislatures, but in the unelected institutions of government, where much of the focus in political science has been on whether elected officials reflect their constituents. This article pushes that lens onto law enforcement agencies, where the stakes of representation may be different, but no less significant. The paper also contributes to ongoing debates about the role of ideology in public service professions, and builds on prior work by Mummolo and others showing that policing institutions are not politically neutral.
Tell us about the research design and data.
This is a descriptive observational study, built on impressive administrative and voter file linkage. The authors compile personnel records from 275 law enforcement agencies, including local police departments, county sheriffs, and state police. They link these records to voter registration and turnout data, using state voter files and validated matching techniques. Altogether, the data cover more than 250,000 officers, making this arguably the largest dataset on the political affiliation of American police officers ever assembled. They're very transparent about what kinds of matches they keep, which states they include, and how they ensure quality. The resulting dataset allows them to calculate the partisan composition of officers in each department, compare it to the public, and examine variation across geographic and institutional contexts.
What are the key findings?
The authors find that police officers are significantly more likely to be Republican than the civilians in their jurisdictions, especially in large, urban, Democratic-leaning areas. For example, in cities like New York or Los Angeles, police officers are more conservative than the public by a wide margin. The paper also finds that political diversity within agencies varies substantially, with some urban departments having more ideological heterogeneity, while rural departments and state police forces tend to be more politically homogeneous. Another finding is that police officers vote at similar rates to the general population, debunking any assumption that they're politically disengaged.
Can you evaluate the article's contribution to political science?
This is a valuable empirical contribution because it provides solid, large-scale evidence for something many suspected, but hadn't systematically measured. The main result is not especially surprising, but the scope and clarity of the analysis give it real weight.
Who should read this article?
This article is clearly written and very well organized. The methods are transparent and explained carefully, even for readers who aren't experts in voter file matching. Still, I'd say it's most appropriate for researchers in political behavior, representation, and public administration, rather than a general audience. If you're interested in policing, administrative state accountability, or the intersection of politics and bureaucracy, this is a must-read. For others, it's a strong example of careful descriptive work with administrative data.
I see.
That's my take, Ryan. Thanks for letting me walk through it.
Political science data features political diversity in U.S. police agencies in the law, courts, and justice subfield.
And we should remind listeners that the authors posted full replication materials online. You can find links on our website.
Next, let's discuss Jennifer Gaudette's article, Polarization in Police Union Politics, which was also published in AJPS in 2025.
Thanks, Ryan. This article looks at a timely and politically charged question. How do police union endorsements shape public attitudes toward mayoral candidates? And do those effects vary by partisanship? The core question is, do police union endorsements help or hurt local political candidates? And does the effect depend on the voter's partisan identity?
How does this article relate to existing political science research?
This article speaks to broader debates about political polarization, partisan sorting, and the politicization of institutions. It connects especially to work on how organizational endorsements serve as cues for voters, extending this logic to the context of police unions, which have become more visible and controversial in the wake of protests against police violence. It also adds to the literature on interest groups and local elections by showing that endorsements can polarize rather than unify, particularly around issues like policing.
Let's talk about the research design and data.
The author conducts a survey experiment on a large sample of over 11,000 U.S. adults, designed to test the causal effects of police union endorsements on support for hypothetical mayoral candidates. The author manipulates whether a candidate is endorsed by a police union and vary the identity of the union, either the local police department's union or the Fraternal Order of Police, a national organization. Gaudette then measures respondents' likelihood of supporting the candidate. The sample comes from an online opt-in panel and is quota matched to the U.S. adult population on key demographics. The study uses a fully randomized between subjects design and includes pre-registered hypotheses.
What are the key findings?
The study finds that police union endorsements tend to polarize support along partisan lines. Among Republicans, a police union endorsement increases support for the candidate. Among Democrats, it decreases support. These effects are particularly strong when the endorsing organization is the Fraternal Order of Police rather than a local union. The paper also finds that these effects are driven in part by changes in perceived ideology. Endorsed candidates are seen as more conservative, which moderates don't necessarily prefer.
Can you evaluate the article's contribution?
This article provides solid experimental evidence for something that might seem intuitive, that police unions act as partisan cues, but it does so with a well-powered design and clear findings, making it a useful contribution even if the takeaway is somewhat expected.
Who should read this article?
This is a clearly written, accessible article that doesn't assume deep technical background. The methods are clean and the figures are easy to interpret. I'd recommend it for political behavior researchers, people working on interest group politics or public opinion, and anyone studying polarization in local elections. It's not especially groundbreaking in its theoretical claims, but it's an effective piece of empirical work with clear policy relevance. If you're interested in how policing intersects with partisanship, this is a good read. For others, it may be of interest more for its design than its novelty.
To wrap up this podcast, let's discuss an interesting and important article that has been overlooked. Which article did you pick for this segment, Emma?
I'd like to discuss the politics of wrongful conviction legislation. This article was written by William D. Hicks, Kevin J. Mullinix and Robert J. Norris. It was published by Cambridge in State Politics and Policy Quarterly in 2021. Its altmetric score is only 2, so I think it has been overlooked by the discipline.
I'm intrigued by the title, Emma. Please tell us more about it.
Thanks, Ryan. The core question that Hicks and his co-authors tackle is this: why do some states in the U.S. adopt laws to prevent or respond to wrongful convictions, while others don't? More specifically, what political conditions make these reforms more likely?
There has been a lot of legal scholarship about wrongful convictions and what causes them. But it hasn't been a major topic in political science. How does the article relate to political science research?
Theoretically, this article contributes to our understanding of how public opinion interacts with electoral dynamics to influence policy. It fits into the literature on dynamic representation, where policy shifts in response to changes in public attitudes, but this article adds a twist. The authors argue that public opinion only really matters when lawmakers feel electorally vulnerable. They also bring in the role of advocacy organizations, like those in the Innocence Network, as a crucial force behind reform.
Tell us about the research design and data analysis.
This is an observational study using state-level data from all 50 states, spanning from 1989 to 2018. They tracked the adoption of 5 specific types of wrongful conviction reforms: eyewitness ID changes, recording of interrogations, preservation of biological evidence, access to post-conviction DNA testing, and compensation for those who have been exonerated. The authors use multilevel growth curve models, with time series data and various state-level political and demographic controls. They also used lag variables to ensure temporal ordering. Key explanatory factors include public opinion liberalism, electoral competitiveness, and the number of innocence organizations operating in a state.
What are the main findings?
The main finding is that public opinion does affect the likelihood of a state adopting wrongful conviction reforms, but only in states where legislative elections are competitive. Where lawmakers are safe in their seats, liberal public opinion doesn't move the needle, and might even have a slight negative correlation with reform. In contrast, in competitive states, liberal public opinion has a clear positive effect. The number of innocence organizations in a state also strongly predicts reform activity, independent of the number of actual exonerations.
Why did you choose to highlight this article?
This article adds real nuance to the idea that public opinion drives policy. It shows that responsiveness isn't automatic. It's conditioned by the political environment. Wrongful convictions have created a crisis of confidence in the courts and judiciary, and this article examines how states' legislatures have responded to the crisis. We've seen other studies examine why some states adopt policy reforms while others do not, but the legislation studied here actually addresses mistakes made by other parts of the government, namely the police and the court system. Hicks and co-authors explore one layer of the topic, but there are more layers to explore, and the authors made their data available to help others do just that.
Who should read this article?
If you're a political scientist interested in criminal justice policy, state politics, or representation, this is a solid read. The modeling is technical enough that you'll want some background in quantitative methods to fully appreciate the analysis. It's definitely valuable for specialists, particularly those studying policy diffusion, advocacy, or electoral dynamics.
Thank you for highlighting the politics of wrongful conviction legislation for us, Emma.
You're welcome. And thank you for hosting the podcast and giving me the opportunity to talk about political science research with you.
And of course, we thank you for listening to the Political Science Data Podcast.